中は生徒なんだな。ただのアヒルに書類を渡すのはどうかと思うが。
おう、クロード様、アイリーン、返事預かった。
警備隊の設立で調査と抑止を兼ねるのは良案だと思う。
So we are on episode number 5 of Villainess, Taming the Final Boss. And last week, when I think about last week in the first 4 episodes, it really felt like the end of a season, right? Like Aileen went in and accomplished her task, right? And she went in and she tamed the final boss, and love is in her future, and Claude is over hills, and the Demon Lord has been satiated. So I really felt like it was the end of an arc, even though we were only 4 episodes in. So, in my head is like, where can we go from here, right? What I would love to see selfishly is her and Claude take over the kingdom, get the demons united, maybe deal with a little bit more turmoil, get to see their love brew more. But they decided to actually pivot from that and kind of start off with another storyline. And what we found out during this episode is there was, in fact, a sequel. And there was this is not it, but there obviously, but there was a sequel to the original game. And we found out that there is other antagonists, other protagonists, and there's a whole other storyline. So essentially what ends up happening is Claude begins to discover that there is a demon, another demon, and damn, what is the demon's name? Artureto or something? I don't know. But there is another demon that is out there kind of causing trouble. And essentially, this demon is one of the main big bosses, the final boss of the second game that apparently comes to fruition. Now, before I really get more deep into the woods, or, into the weeds, what I will say is, from an entertainment aspect, from a laughter aspect, from just enjoying the anime, I still think that this anime is like on a master tier, because my enjoyability, even this episode where I'm going to say something a little bit negative, which I haven't done at all, my enjoyability level was still at an all-time high. I hella laughed. I was like, I gasped a few times. Like, all those moments still happen like they have been happening every single week. So from entertainment value, 10 out of effing 10. There's one problem that I have, though. Actually, there's 2 problems. Let me be specific. There's 2 problems I have about this episode and kind of this next arc that we're about to embark on. And those 2 things are, 1, Aileen goes to this brand new school. She pretends to be a boy. She cuts off her hair. She does all that stuff. Totally fine. That's all cool. She goes to join the student council. Totally cool. Thankfully, Isaac is there. I did note, I was like, yo, Isaac looks like a 35-year-old man. Why is he in this high school? Okay, whatever. So, she goes to join this school. She meets this James guy who ends up, he's going to end up being the Arterita. What the hell was this demon's effing name? You know what I mean? Let me see if I can find out, because it's going to bother me. But she ends up, finding this James guy, and this James guy ends up being basically one of the villains or whatever of the second game. And during this interaction and everything, I'm not gonna find it, but during this interaction, basically she finds out that, okay, he's gonna be like the final boss or whatever. So she decides on herself that she's gonna tame him also, just like she tamed Claude. So that's my first problem is, 4 episodes in, we got brewed up, we got, hyped up, we got, gassed up to be really invested into this love story that involved Claude and involved Aileen. And none of that is being taken away here because, Claude's still very much in love. Aileen is as well. But now with having to tame another demon and another boss, essentially, I understand the aspect of it, but I don't really like it that much, because then that kind of takes us away from Claude, takes us away from this relationship that we've built, as a viewer with him as well. So that's kind of where I kind of break a little bit. It's like the moment she was like, oh, I need to tame him too, I immediately, I verbally said it aloud. I was like, oh, I don't like that. Like, oh, I don't like that. And it's just because now she's, her justification, she has to tame him, make him fall in love with her and stuff, She has to tame him to save Claude. And that's her justification, you know what I mean? It's like, well, life doesn't work like that, even in your game life. But I'm going to say, there's nothing I can do about it. That's the way that they wanted to write the story. I'm just going to have to take it in strides. The second thing about about the second thing that is a negative that I didn't like is, she very much clearly said to us, oh, I loved playing the original game. I knew it backwards and forward. Then she tells us, oh, I remember now, there was a sequel to my favorite game. And this is Dragon Star Veneer, if anybody's interested. But she was like, oh, there is a sequel to this game. She was like, I don't really remember it too well, but I remember, a little bit about it. And then she proceeds to remember everything about it, even the answers. You know what I mean? Like, if there's a game that you like, oh yeah, that does exist, and you're like, oh, I don't really remember it, and then suddenly she remembers everything. She remembers the boss, the antagonist. She saves this girl named Rachel, and she was like, oh, she was the villain of the first story. She meets the student council pretty boys. She's like, oh yeah, they were the people that you could romance. She remembers all of their backstories. Then she gets into class, and the teacher asks, the pompous teacher asks her a question. She remembers the answer. Like, I was like, okay, do you barely remember this? Did you dabble in this sequel, or do you remember every single scene? Because the way you're depicting it is like you remember every single scene. I play a lot of games. I dabble in games, right? I'm going to play this game this weekend. I'm going to dabble in it. If I don't like it, or if I don't like whatever, I'm going to play. Ask me what happened in a month. I'd be like, I don't effing know. I think there was a dragon. It's like, how? So that was a part that really kind of like irked me. It was like, okay, you could have just said, oh yeah, there was a sequel. I really loved it, but I'm still a fan of the first one. But here's what happened in the second. They could have just approached it differently. And the fact that she was like, oh, I barely remember it, and then suddenly she remembers everything, I was like, that just ticked me off. Okay, that's all. That was all that was negative. It didn't ruin the episode. It was just two things that little irked me, which hasn't happened with the Villainess at all. So the other things that I really enjoyed about the episode is we find out that Claude's a poet. He lets her know that he gets moist in the fall season when he thinks of Aileen. Aileen writes him back. That's cool. I hope keep doing a good job. She basically kills this guy's emotions. We find out later that there was a attack of a vampire, potentially the work of a demon. The student council gives her a mission to say, hey, go figure out what the hell happened here. But, that's how you're going to get into the student council. Go figure out this vampire stuff. And if you can, we'll let you in the student council. We find out that, again, that Rachel girl is actually the villain of the second game, but definitely doesn't give the villainous vibes at all. So I'm hoping she's going to get a friendship with this girl. She comes up again later on where she's being manipulated by a teacher. We find out that the teacher is probably the demon, probably the vampire guy. She can't pay him with money, so she's got to pay with her body. Aileen goes and stops her, and then we run into James in his demon form for whatever reason, and that's where the episode basically ended. So, new school arc, new final boss to tame, new goals. Aileen, which I was very interested on what the hell happened last week as well with that ending as well. And then, basically new stakes are here, because if Aileen cannot stop this James guy, then he's going to lead the army into invading the human stuff, and Claude, because Claude is the demon lord, is going to be stopped, or he's going to be blamed for all of this, which will also impede his ability to exceed or succeed to the throne for the Empire, as well as that'll affect Aileen, because she'll get another bad ending. So, lots of at stakes here. Things I didn't really like a lot, but overall, again, really entertaining. I laughed a lot. I still had a great time watching the episode. There was just a couple things I was like, oh no. So we'll see what happens next week with this whole James guy and everything. But I guess we're on to the next one, right? We're on to the second game with Aileen, and it's time to, go through romancing, just like we would in a otome game. The problem with it is that she's not in the game anymore, and Claude does exist. So let's see what ends up happening. All right, my friends. See you guys next Saturday. Peace.